what I want to celebrate today, and we're going to do this over October and November, I want to do a sermon series on the blueprint for a family. And I think sometimes I get so into the theology of the Bible, of God's eternal significance, but it's lived out in very practical ways. And so I'm going to spend October and November talking about the right blueprint for a family. Now, if you said a blueprint, it's a building plan. If you said a house blueprint, it's how you're going to build a home. Now, just out of curiosity, what would you do differently with your present house? If you change the blueprint, what's something in your house that you've been annoyed by, you'd love to do differently? If you got a new blueprint, it would add or include or change what? Washer and dryer on the same level as the bedrooms. I'll go one further for you. My wife would like the washer and dryer in her closet. Yes. Literally, clothes go off into the washer, come out of the washer to the shelves. Only problem is that do I get to use it? I don't know. A new bedroom. A little more space? Bigger bedroom? Love it. 2 sinks in the bathroom. Preach. Yes. I would love the man sink. I just want my space. I have a toothbrush. I shave. That's it. It's right there. Love that. From the garage into the pantry? I have seen that now too. I'm not going to lie. It's like a dumbwaiter door or something. You just slide it in and it goes right into your pantry. That's brilliant. I'd like a bigger backyard. That was my whole thing. I'd love a little more space. What else? Anybody else? You're all thinking about it. In other words, you can visualize it, you can map it out, and you're like, this would make more sense. And if you really got into it, you'd want a blueprint. You want to say, well, do I have the space? Would this work? Well, now let me ask you, if you redid the blueprint for your family, let's not get into it too much, okay? Let me have a little fun with this. This was a blueprint I saw when I looked it up. This is a blueprint of a teenage boy, what he would like for his house. As you can see, he's got the garden above the gym. To the left, you already got to it, didn't you? He's got an arcade in his house. His dream house includes an arcade. He's got a master bedroom. Above the master bedroom has a roller rink. This is a little dated, I guess, or maybe he's just like a throwback kid. He's like, I want a roller rink, bring back. And then under the master bedroom, he has a racetrack. And next to the racetrack, what does he have? None other than hot girl's room. That's teenage boy for you. Yep, clearly he's not getting a girlfriend for a while. What you're looking at is just the same that's true for us, is that if you had a blueprint, what I want to get into is what is a blueprint for your family? What is it for your marriage and for your family? And it may change some if you're single. It may change if you're raising a family, if you're an empty nester. A few essentials come to mind. You want a foundation that your family can stand on, the walls and the roof that you say, this sets our family secure. But you also want rooms to enjoy. And what does that look like for your family? What is the family room, the dining room, the laundry room? Where does your family make memories? Well, I'm doing this sermon series on marriage and family because I want to talk about the importance it has. And we overlook this. When you ask society, you say, what is the bedrock of society? Most people will say things like governance, school, education, business, capitalism, whatever the cause you think there might be out there that you participate in. And this is the Bible speaking, at its root is the family. And you can do extended family, and then you can funnel it down to immediate family, and even funnel it down even more. The lowest common denominator of our human existence is marriage. Of course, this may be a sermon series that you say, well, I'm not married, or I'm not married yet. Or you come with baggage, and you say, I've been divorced, we're living together, I've had a lot of relationships that I'm not proud of. All of that is going to come into the conversation, and I'm going to give you grace at the end of the sermon today to point out how special it is that we get that grace, and we get those second chances. But here's the thing I'm going to use as our starting point. I do believe we live in a culture that is the frog in the boiling water. We now have progressed to a point of regress. And I think this is partly technology, that modern amenities, technologies, fast food, on-demand TV, cell phones, we have eroded what I'm going to challenge in this sermon series, the communal space. A communal focus that your person, your individual, your agency is for the purpose of others. And we've reduced that to say, no, it's actually the agency is my independence. And what that renders is a disenfranchisement, a fracturing of this family unit. And yet you know how important your family is supposed to be. Even if you come from a difficult family, you long for ways it could have been better. When I present this, I've mentioned this at times, and I say something like the historical family, and somebody say, you mean the traditional family? And I've sort of jumped ship from that, because saying the traditional family is, in many ways in our culture today, the frog in the boiling water, has crept in to essentially saying it's dated, it's archaic, it's, in some ways, we've rendered the traditional family as a negative connotation for the patriarchy. Now, what I want to render to you is that is true of ancient Israel, but that's true of ancient times. They distorted God's blueprint. But in the Bible, and this theme across the Bible, the one that is consistent, not contextual, not something that was rendered something 1,500 years before Christ, but something that was throughout Scripture, is actually in its time was progressive. And it was complementary. And so I say the historical blueprint for marriage is going to render a renewal of what God intends for us to live out with our own families. But I have to challenge the culture, the relativistic fallacy, if you will. It's not a bad relativistic. No, it's not Cousin Eddie. What we're saying is it's the relativism of our culture that says, but if I like it my way, then that is ergo the right way. If it's good for me, then it's objectively good. It should be encouraged for others. This is the fallacy that we have to challenge. The foundation of family is cracking, not because we have alternative family dynamics, many of us coming from blended families, divorced families, or even marriages that were loveless marriages. You go, my parents raised us, they never divorced, but they didn't really seem to like each other. What I'm challenging is, while those exist, we can't justify them as saying that that's the way family is supposed to be. Because when we start doing that, we start creeping away from this blueprint. And God, in his infinite wisdom from the beginning of time, marked it in such a way that if we follow it, it truly is better. And it doesn't matter where you're at. While we talk about the model, we're also going to end with a method. The model, the blueprint, and then our methods in which we gain that back. We strive for it more. We get a second chance. Let me start with what I mean by our challenge as a culture, the cracking foundation. In 1970, married couples, and again, this will be rendered where somebody might say the argument, but they weren't happy marriages, right? Anybody remember that? I don't want you to share if you're a shotgun wedding, right? Nobody talks about the shotgun wedding today because now it's like, meh, we don't care. But the shotgun wedding was, you got her knocked up, now you got to marry her. That was what, right? One of the things we've rendered is we go, but that was a terrible way to do it. What is the alternative? I'm not saying we should ever do it that way and force two people to get married. But when we devalue marriage in its entirety now, only 47% of people who can be married are married. Now, flip that, children born outside of marriage. And if you want a statistic, please look this up later. It won't take 2 clicks. You will find out how difficult it is, the insecurity of children growing up where they don't have that security. Now, if you're here this morning and this is true for you, you're going to share that and say, I'm going to give you a success story at the end that says you're a part of something special by being here. But we're going to talk about it. The 40%, children born outside of marriage, 70% is urban children born out of marriage. Now, here's one that should really scare you. Young people don't even want to have babies anymore. Fertility rate in 1970 is 3.5. And you may say, I don't know that I want 3.5 kids. I don't know that I want 4 kids. The over-under on that. But it has to be 2.2 for women of age to give birth, or we don't replenish our society. We're a dying society. I've shared with you that this is why Russia has Conception Day. They have a holiday where they intentionally tell couples, go home and make babies. Yeah. The guys are like, yeah, I love that holiday. Let's go make more babies. It's crazy, but it's true. We're not having babies. Japan is dying. Literally, countries are dying. Most first world countries are below the threshold and literally dying, declining. Children uncoupled are also often found to be in poverty, so meaning that insecurity of the home creates some impoverished upbringing. Now, you understand these challenges, you've lived these, you might be living these challenges. So I'm just reiterating, the Bible model of marriage and family is, in a word, what we're going to struggle with, hard. Most people don't get this right. We don't get it right the first time. We don't get it right through the seasons of life. I've said that to my own kids. If I could go back, the one thing I would fix is how often I just flipped off the radar and just yelled at them and got mad. And I created that tendency to be afraid of Dad because he's really mad. And I thought, you know what? That was a terrible way to raise my kids. Now, other things were very good. We had very good experiences. But we're going to look at this from a perspective that says, I'm not going to decide that the way I did it is justified. I'm going to look at it and say, there's going to be things that didn't do well for the sake of family, marriage. I want to really understand the biblical model, and I want to know what the methods are that I can do it better. If it's in the past, then learn from the past. If it's in the present, let's see what we can do to make it better. That lifetime commitment is probably the most challenging. You only have to work until you're 65 or so many years, but you're married till death do us part. How crazy is that? Forever. My wife and I have this joke. I say, I love you more. She says, no, I love you more. I said, I know I win at this. You know why I know I win at this? Because when I say, when we die, we're no longer married, and she gets happy. She gets a smile. Yay. I'm like, I'm your best friend forever. I know, Becca, I've been replaced. As soon as we had kids, I keep falling down our dog Lulu, and then there's me. I know where I fit in the marriage, the relationship. What you know how hard this is to be married, and here's what we're going to talk about: the person who's so different than you. But because of that very different person, that relationship, even where you've messed it up, you want the ideal, you want something in mind to say, why does it matter? So we're going to have this conversation today. And I am going to take a little issue with God. The one thing we're going to talk about with God is that He gives us the blueprint. He does not give us the manual. Has anybody ever figured out why that is? Think about it. I have couples that get married, and when I marry the couple, I say, how much have you learned about math? Thousands of hours through school. How much have you learned about biology? Thousands of hours in science. How much have you learned about, right? And then I say, how many hours do you think you've been taught? Not sex education, about a relationship. How many hours has somebody taught you about what it means to be a husband or to be a wife? We finally got a class going for this. Praying for the wife, praying for the husband. But when I ask the couple, guess how many they say? 0. Nobody ever teaches us that. The most intimate, meaningful relationship, and we have no idea, there's no manual. Multiply that by 100 when you have a baby. There's no manual for that one. I'd never been around kids, and so when Joey was born, the nurse handed me Joey, little baby Joey, with his cone head. I held baby Joey, and she said, hold his head. And I thought, does it fall off? I had no idea. You guys are like, and he dedicates babies. We hand him our children to dedicate. I do. I actually like when they're a little bit later, right? Don't be born just the week before Mother's Day. Give me a little space. Put a little meat on those bones. Your business has onboarding. How many of you have been in an onboarding class? There's no onboarding for parenting. There's no class. We don't get a manual. But you'll find out that when we talk about the blueprint, there are some things that will give us a model and give us some method. So we're going to talk about the blueprint as a model for marriage and family, and the methods of making course corrections or even just giving some grace, if simply to lend understanding to our past, our present circumstances, If you're not married, if you don't have kids, this still relates to you because the foundations of these most intimate relationships then expands. Remember, that is at the heart of our society. Not government, not business, family. The family unit. And so by extension, all of us have a mother and a father. All of us have siblings of some sort, extended family, in-laws. Maybe they weren't the best experiences growing up, but if we talk about the model that God presents to us about the right relationships, we can extend it into those other relationships too. So let's go ahead and get started. There are three foundational truths in one of these early passages of Scripture. God created human beings in his own image. In the image of God, he created them. Male and female, he created them. If this isn't just as potent of a scripture in the Bible, I don't know what else there is. Then God blessed them and said, and here's the next two, be fruitful and multiply, fill the earth, subdue it, govern it, tend to it. Let me explain these first three outcomes and how powerful it is that God is establishing marriage and family at the start, the very beginning. First of all, God created them male and female in his own image, imago Dei. This is important because in Genesis, there's a little tension between the pluralistic language, let us create human beings in our own image. But the only reason that word is in there is because you can't translate the Hebrew to this enigma of a word that is God is in three persons, still one God, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. But what's really powerful about this moment is that male and female. So let me in Genesis 2:24 it says, for this reason a man will leave his mother and father and be united to this very different person, this woman, and they will become one. God said the only way I can get people to fully understand in some human context my own identity in the triune God is for this man and this woman to become one. These very different people to become one. And out of them to be co-creators. What's the second one? To be fruitful and multiply. We're intended to be co-creators with God. When you decided to have children, when you have children, I've shared this with you before, it's one of the most powerful lessons I have in life about the human spirit and our uniqueness. Every baby born, when it is born, is an expression of God in the world that we've otherwise never seen before. Now take that in for a minute. Every baby born is a unique thumbprint, heartbeat, expression of God, imago Dei, and you as parents get to be co-creators with God in bringing that imago Dei, that presence of God into the world. And why do we do that? Well, the third part is we do that because we're supposed to then raise those children to govern the earth. Now, the evils of the world are at the hands of humanity, but the greatest blessings of the world are also at the hands of humanity. Bears are not out there wondering how they can have a better ecosystem for other creatures. They're not. Squirrels do not care. They're just trying to find out where they put the last nut. That's the focus. And not get hit by a car. That's it. Humanity has this imago Dei. We have this the image bearer, the ability to reason and to understand. And so in order to be good stewards of the earth, that is intentional throughout the Bible. Now I'm going to challenge you through this sermon series. If you ask yourself as a parent, what is your one goal? If your goal is to have your children whom you raise to be safe, to be protected, to have manipulative relationships so they always want you because you create some sort of need for them to need you. If I asked you, what's your purpose as a parent? You ready for this? This is the Bible. This is what we're going to talk about. You raise children to be a benefit to society, that they add value to others. That's what you do. You're raising your children to be protectors, providers, change agents. When I taught CEO and the kids left, I just told them every day, go change the world. You are of nothing short of that capacity. That is exactly what we as parents are meant to do, is to raise our children. Sometimes it doesn't work out. All of you know the story of the children who grew up and did bad things, who were selfish, lacked a work ethic, changed job after job after job. It's never their fault. It's always the boss's fault. I would render it's because they didn't have the discipline when they were growing up. The adage, by the way, is very simple. Discipline your children when they're young, they'll have freedoms when they're old. An undisciplined childhood, an insecure childhood, a trapped, insecure adulthood. And parents, we're going to talk about what it means to be the parents in the biblical form that says this is going to be a little bit scary, but I got to make it a challenge for you so that it's no hill for a climber. When you get out there, you're ready for the world. And it's no guarantee. Just ask Jesus in the story of the prodigal son. Even for the good father who sees his son leave him, mock him, make a mockery of him. So what's the evidence of how this blueprint for marriage and family is best modeled? We're going to talk in the next few months about the success sequence. What I mean by this is that we're going to prioritize the right relationships in the right order and get the best results. The Institute for Family Studies did this. It's very simple. The study was with all these couples and following them for a period of years. In their 30s, only 3% of them were found to be in poverty. 97% out of the poverty line. And here's the three things that they found as what were the characteristics of those relationships. Graduated high school, possessed a full-time job, got married before having children. Now that has been an argumentative point. People have said, are those causations or are they just, they render themselves similar to one another, right? Or are they a sequence of success? And truly, the biblical model is going to teach us that there's a pattern of which you do things. And here's the second one that's going to come in. It ultimately comes back to delayed gratification. When I look at parents who satisfy their own urges first and then care about the kids second, I look at selfish parents. And selfish parents struggle with delayed gratification. I got to be honest, I do this when it comes to eating. I'm sorry. I never fed the kids first. I'm like, if I eat and I'm happy, I'll be nice to the kids. Let me eat first. But this is true. Delayed gratification in sexuality. Delayed gratification in your relationship with your spouse, significant other. You know this. You want success. You want a sequence of success. God says, make the sacrifice first, and I promise you riches and joy and meaningful relationships later. In raising children, discipline that always comes after the fact. I'm going to be honest. Ready for this? This is me. My kids will tell me this is where you were a bad parent. If you always discipline them after the fact, you're an undisciplined parent. If you're always yelling, by the way, yelling should be reserved for fire. That's my lesson for you. If there's a fire, we yell fire. But if you're always yelling at your kids because they didn't do what you wanted them to do, you have an undisciplined household. The discipline that comes first is the schedule. Getting up, routines, going to school, coming home from school, going to your activities, gathering your resources for those activities. This is what you're raising your children to do. Discipline that comes before the fact is biblical parenting. It's more important to be disciplined at bedtime and screen time and sweets. Of course, we're going to talk about this for emotional stability. A healthy marriage models problem solving, collaboration, conflict resolution. It raises emotionally healthy children who also problem solve instead of lashing out or feeling entitled. And last one, and this is going to be hard for some of you. We're going to start with the last one first next week. You ready for this? Teamwork makes the dream work. How many of you think your biggest enemy is your spouse? They don't understand me. Again, if you're not married, you can say this to any close relationship you have that just drives you. You're like, you want to punch your boss or your coworker in the face. Like, oh. And they're like, teamwork makes the dream work. Poof. Every one of us has been there. That's because very different people have a very hard time working together. But that unity, that oneness, truly is. Marriage doesn't come with a manual. I get it. But the illness is easy to diagnose. You're either rowing through the storm together or you're beating each other with the oars. And the storm is still coming. And so we're going to talk in the next couple months, how can your marriage deal with those conflicts so you're not trying to hit each other, either literally or figuratively, but you're rowing together. Truly, I have little boats with oars that I give couples that I look at and say, and they're great conflict and crisis, and I go, take that metaphor home, set it somewhere, remind yourself, am I fighting you or am I fighting the storm with you? How does our marriage work? Marriage and parenting done right means you have a compounding partnership, income, division of labor, good cop, bad cop, a wider perspective on difficult situations in your life. It's supposed to be a great partnership. And again, if you're not married, if you don't have children, that's okay. You have parents, you have siblings. You have lessons to learn from these foundational relationships that all of us can apply to our relationships. So that's what we're going to work towards. Let's start with 2 goals. Our goal in the next 2 months is that we stop saying the fractured foundation is the new blueprint. We have to stop. And as a culture, we've done that incessantly. We keep trying to redefine it. And we redefine it because we have a bad understanding of the biblical historical text and the model. So we're going to talk about the model, God's blueprint for marriage and family. But I'm also going to give you this. We're going to talk about method. There is also God's method when you come from broken homes, because it is so hard to be redeemed. If you come from an abusive family, if you come from a broken family, if you're raised by a single parent or you are a single parent, if you're raised by divorced parents or you've been divorced, if you're coming out of unhealthy relationships or you're in one now, Jesus has a method, practical things you can do to enter into a deeper relationship, a greater security. Let me end with this. The old adage, anybody ever heard the adage that says blood is thicker than water? And you've used it because you said blood is thicker than water. Has always been perceived that blood, my kinship, the people of which I share my blood with, is thicker than water. And it comes from the 12th century. It's been perceived that water would be the baptism of your spiritual family. And yet, that's actually not the phrase. That has been reduced, and it's confused as to whether or not which one started first. But the one that has been often overlooked is really the one that makes the most sense. Blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of the womb. Welcome to your family. Jesus said this often. He compared it in John 3. You must be born of the water and of the Spirit. What ultimately comes is the blood of Jesus, the blood of the new covenant. He says that when we receive communion, the body broken for you, the cup poured out for the forgiveness of sin, this new covenant I offer you. When his mom and siblings came and said, hey, you're embarrassing us, stop doing this. They said, hey, your family's out there. And he said, who is my mother? Who are my brothers and sisters? Those who do the will of the Father. Jesus radicalized, if you will, this new family, modeling a willingness to sacrifice for those whom you love, despite if you're blood relatives. This became a metaphor for adoption, be called sons and daughters of God. It's a metaphor of marriage. Husbands, love your wives as Christ loves the church. Wives, respect your husbands as the church is to Christ. A metaphor for children who trust and respect their parents without fully understanding their parents' reasoning for things you don't understand now, but this is the discipline I'm applying so you can get a routine in life so that later life won't be so hard for you because you'll be better to adapt to it. Ephesians 6, children, obey your parents because you belong to the Lord. And this is the right thing to do. Honor your mother and father, even if you don't always agree with them. It's the first commandment that gives you the promise of blessing. If you honor your father and mother, things will go well with you, of a long life on earth. And in turn, it's a model for parenting. Fathers, do not provoke your children. Do not provoke them to anger by the way you treat them. Rather, bring them up with the discipline and instruction that comes from the Lord. I'm going to go ahead and offer my closing prayer on these 2 goals, that we see the model and understand it correctly, and that where we have missed it, we have the method of Jesus bringing us back to his own. If you had dysfunction in your family, welcome to God's family. We're going to model it and do it right and do it better. And if you struggle with your own family, let's keep learning together so when you leave here, you can go into those relationships and you can keep trying to apply them to God's perfect and wonderful blueprint.